I surveyed hundreds of landlords across the country, and the number one issue that people had were questions about landlord and tenant disputes. So it got me thinking, could you actually use AI to give you legitimate real estate legal advice? The answer, yes and no. But it works way better than you think. But the crazy part is once you understand how this is set up, the applications to your real estate business are unlimited. In this video, I'm gonna go over step by step the framework I use to have ChatGPT answer my landlord and tenant legal questions, and how you could apply this to almost anything. I already know what you're thinking. AI and ChatGPT can give you false information. Yes, it can. And so can Google, and so can your investor buddy who has 100 units, and so can really any professional. In fact, there was an actual case where a lawyer used ChatGPT to do the legal research, and ChatGPT just made up the information that it gave. So we'll touch on that a little bit later in this video, what we can learn from that and how we could prevent that pitfall. I never thought I'd actually have to say this, but I'm not a lawyer. This isn't legal advice. This is just what worked for me and what I think might work for you. So to get started, we have to understand something. Any resource or professional is only as good as two things. One, the information that it has access to or was trained on. And two, the information that you as a person who has a problem gives the resource or professional. For example, if you go into the doctor and you tell them you have an issue with your leg, but really you actually have an issue with your arm, it's gonna be pretty hard for that doctor to figure out that you have an issue with your arm and how to solve the actual issue. Likewise, if you go in and you tell the doctor exactly what's wrong, like you're supposed to, say it's an issue with your arm, but let's say that doctor just isn't trained on how to deal with your arm and or doesn't have the resources to figure it out, you probably won't get your issue solved either. So both of those two things are important, and we're gonna talk about how to break those up and build out our tool. So we're gonna start with the first one. Your AI will only be as good as the resources that it has access to. And at the time of this recording, ChatGPT, for example, is lagging behind on its pre-trained model about a year or so. So without any access to the internet, if you ask it a question, it's gonna go on data that's about a year old. So let's say a law has changed in the last year and you ask it a question, if it can even find that information, it's gonna be outdated. And with ChatGPT now able to access the internet, that's a huge leap forward, but you're still relying on it to access the right places and hoping that they're up to date. So before we ask ChatGPT any legal questions, we're gonna make sure it has the most up-to-date information on the following things: federal law, state law, county laws, city laws, and an example of what's in our actual lease. And that's just the basics, and sort of where it actually gets interesting. So if you were doing short-term rentals, you would need short-term rental laws. If you're doing things related to mobile homes, you need mobile home laws. Let's say you are a builder and doing rehabs and flips, you would need building code and building code laws. And this is sort of where the customization comes in and how this can become a very powerful tool. But if you're just starting out, you might be wondering, how do I actually know what information and what laws to feed ChatGPT? Let's do that next. So head over to chatgpt.com, make an account. You don't have to make a paid account. This is just a free account. So the first thing we're actually gonna do is use ChatGPT to figure out where the laws are that we need to go find so we can store and later on give back to ChatGPT so it can give us the right answers. So there's a prompt that's in the description that you can copy and paste here. So the only thing you need to do is put in the state that you are located in. I'm just going to do Wisconsin. And then for the city, state, and county, I'm going to put Madison, Wisconsin in Dane County. And then we're going to search and see what it gives us. So perfect. It threw out a few things. It threw out some state statutes and laws we need to go find. It threw out some county ordinances and also some city ordinances. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that we need to go find. If you wanted to, you could also maybe do this in a Google search, but this is a pretty good comprehensive list as just being a landlord of the state. So we need to go and actually find the PDF versions, if possible, of all these things and save them in a specific folder. So it's a lot. This is going to be like 5 documents, and this is just sort of the base stuff we need to do. So I'm just going to take this, and instead of clicking on this link, sometimes this doesn't load up. I'm just going to copy this and throw it into Google. So throw this into Google here, and pull this up. So these are the landlord tenant laws for my state. I'm going to look for something that allows me to save a PDF. So it might be PDF icon, it might say PDF. So ideally, this is what we want to do. If you can't do that, you could also just copy everything. So you could hit Control A or Command A, depending on whether you're on a Windows or a Mac, and just highlight everything. And then you could just save this into a Word document. But I'd poked around at a lot of these, and I feel like most states have a PDF document you can download. So we're going to hit this button. So this is the most up-to-date document. So I'm going to save this. So I'm going to create a folder on my desktop. Let's call it ChatGPT Law Resources. So within this folder that I just created, the Law ChatGPT Resources, I'm going to create a date. So this is sort of the tedious part, that you're going to ideally want to update this periodically. That choice is up to you, but I'm going to just put a date here, December 21st. All right, so I'm going to save that in that folder. So I saved one thing. So now I got to go back here, and the other thing that I got to look at is this administrative code. So I'm going to copy this, go back to Google, and I'm going to do the same thing until I have the PDF versions of all of these. So just a quick note here. So I'm looking for my city ordinances, and the first thing that pops up is a property management company. So just make sure when you're going to the sites and you're getting the information, it is the official site. So usually it's a .gov, but it could be a .com. So this one says City of Madison. So this is probably the one that I need. I could pop down here and I could see that this is what I am looking for. As I'm going through here, this is an example of one. It's not a PDF, but it lets me download it in a Word doc file, which is completely fine as well. Two other highly recommended things that I would also save in your documents are, one, if you can find any laws or statutes about small claims court that your state has, I would save those, because that usually has some information that might be helpful on the front end. The other thing is on the state, city, or county level, if they publish an official resource, it's not really a law, but it's like a resource handbook, a landlord tenant handbook. That usually is another good thing just to save in there, because again, the more stuff you have in there, the better response you're going to get from the ChatGPT or any AI when you ask it the actual question. And again, I know this sounds like a pain to put all the stuff in here, but you're mapping it all out once, and then after you have it in there, yes, you'll need to update it periodically, but it won't be as bad as the first time you just sort of map out everything that you need. So let's keep going with this. So I got all my items in here. I ended up with about 6 things. And again, you could end up with 3 things. You could end up with 15 things, but I have a couple things on the state level that are both landlord tenant law stuff and things with housing. I have a document here about small claims court. My city had 2 documents that I threw in here that were ordinances, and then my state also had like a landlord tenant guide, which is just disseminating some of the information that is in the state statutes in a different form. However, it's from the official state government website, so I thought that would help as well. I almost forgot, I did also need to add in my lease. So I'm not adding an actual signed lease, but just a blank version. So ChatGPT knows the provisions that are in my lease here. So I got that added in here. And you might have noticed I also didn't get anything with any federal laws. The federal laws are just a little bit more tricky to find PDF documents of them, and they change a little bit less frequently. So we're going to handle the federal laws with a prompt that we're going to give ChatGPT later. And again, remember, I put these all in one folder and I threw them with the date, because if I want to use this again in a month or 3 months, I might want to update all these. And now that I know which ones I'm looking for, it'll be a lot easier. Okay, let's pause for a second, because if you're an attorney or if you're somebody who's just like really into law type stuff, you're probably seething right now thinking this is terrible, because we're missing one big thing. So there are multiple types of laws, and the other big type of law that we're missing is either called case law or common law. And these laws are pretty much based on a landmark case or trial. So in real estate and landlord stuff, there are a lot of different case laws that can make rules and precedences that we need to factor in to our ChatGPT bot. So for that, we're actually not going to find these documents, because finding the actual case documents can be a little bit difficult. We're going to rely on a prompt within ChatGPT to do that. So anytime there are these sort of big landmark trials, I'd say like 99 out of 100 times, somebody writes a blog post about it. It gets updated somewhere in a resource guide. So we're going to have in our prompt, we're going to handle that in our prompt. We're going to have it look for this case law that might be relevant to the question we're asking. So we got it factored in, but we're not going to go find a document for it. Okay, part 1 is done. Awesome, you got through it. So what we did is we armed our AI with the most up-to-date resources and information so we know it's pulling from the right stuff. But again, the other part of it is making sure we are asking the right questions to get the best information. So that's going to be part 2. So in part 2, essentially what we're talking about is something called prompt engineering. And you may have heard that term. That's essentially the ability to ask the AI the right questions to make sure it's giving you the right response. When it comes to prompt engineering and how you ask an AI a question, there are a lot of different theories. So what I did is I took a couple popular ones and sort of put them together to create something and dumbed it down a little bit that will work really well for this situation. So there are 4 parts. Part number 1 is the identity. You need to tell the AI who it is and what it's trying to act as. And in our case, it's a real estate attorney giving advice in your state. The other thing we need to do is tell it some context. Who are we? Do we manage our own properties? How many units do we own? Where are the properties located? That type of stuff. So that is context. Number 3, you need to give it a job. And this is what we think about when we usually are using AI. We just tell it what we need it to do. So we do need to give it the job. And then the last thing is we need to give it some constraints. What playground do you want it to operate in? So we did all this work to get all this really up-to-date information. So we wanted to use that up-to-date information. And then I told you there was a couple things we were going to handle with the prompt, including some stuff about case law and then some stuff about the federal laws. So we're going to have that in the constraints and things that we want it to do. So luckily I did the hard work, and in the description, I have a template that you can just copy and paste and plug in your own information. So let's head back over into ChatGPT, upload all the stuff that we found, use our prompt, and put this whole thing together with a couple of examples. So I'm going to start a new chat. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to upload all those documents I saved. So I typed this up just as I'm uploading documents that I wanted to save that I'll ask about later. So I'm going to hit that little paperclip icon, upload from my computer, and I'm going to navigate to where I saved all that stuff. I saved it on my desktop with my date. I'm going to select all these things and hit open. It's attaching all these files. Then I'm just going to hit enter or the arrow to send this all into ChatGPT. So it has our documents in here. I'm going to copy and paste this prompt. So I'm going to fill in a bunch of stuff here. So I'm inserting my state, which is Wisconsin. So the identity is that ChatGPT is a real estate lawyer who specializes in landlord tenant law in Wisconsin. And then after that, I'm landlord. I manage my own properties. If you didn't, you could change that statement and then go ahead and put your city, state, and county. So I am Madison, Wisconsin in Dane County. Next, your lease ending date is important. So if you want to throw that in there, my lease that I'm going to be talking about is month to month in my made up scenario. So I'm just going to hit month to month. And then again, we uploaded a standard lease in there, but if you have any additional clauses, like let's say, tenants are responsible for snow removal or something like that, you could put that in there. I'm deleting that because I don't have any additional clauses that I usually add to my leases, at least in my made up scenario that I'm doing right now. Okay, so job, can you advise me on what to do on handling this situation? And then we have to insert the situation. I actually went to a ton of landlord Facebook groups and I analyzed what some of the most common questions were that people were asking. So I'm just going to throw one of those in here. All right, this is a good one. Can a landlord legally evict a tenant for unauthorized modifications to the property, such as installing a chandelier or replacing landscaping? Good question. And then when we were talking about some of the constraints, so I'm having it reference the attached documents. I'm also wanting it to see if there's a conflict between what I wrote in my lease and what the state statutes say, because sometimes you just have leases that violate certain things and you want to know that. So I have that in there. Also in this prompt, I want it to search the internet for some case law, and then I'm having it reference some federal websites, including HUD, fair housing, and a couple other things in here. So let's go ahead and see what it gives us. Okay, so it spit out an answer, and this is the very annoying part about ChatGPT. It wants to give you an answer in the fastest way possible, so sometimes it will straight up skip steps. So after it gives you an answer, you have to ask it this question. In this response, did you reference my attached documents? And what it'll do, it'll say, oh crap, I cut corners. And it'll say no, and it will reference the document. This is always the initial response that I will ask ChatGPT, and then it will give me another answer. So as a landlord of Wisconsin, it answered this question correctly. So it's saying, yep, you can evict them based on this. However, this should be in your lease. These are the state statutes that you should reference and look at. This is what the eviction process might be like. And then this is what it's doing. It's giving you a very lawyer-like answer because, again, it's a lawyer, an attorney in Wisconsin. Maintain a detailed record, make sure you have communication. And what I like here is talking about, consulting with a actual attorney specializing in Wisconsin, landlord tenant law. And it's giving you some stuff to go look at if you want some more information. Okay, so I did want to pause here and revisit what I talked about at the beginning of this video. When I said ChatGPT was used in a case, some lawyers actually used it, and it gave them false information. So we are not going to be those lawyers, because what they didn't do was take some time to verify and gave them the correct information. So I recommend this. Doesn't matter whether it is ChatGPT, whether it's your investor buddy, whether it's anybody. Take 60 seconds and verify some of the information that it gave you. So in the response, it cited state statutes that you could spend 60 seconds and just Google to make sure that they actually say what they say. It cited some resources. So number one, verify. You don't have to do a lot of work, but just verify it. Spend 60 seconds verifying it. It saved you so much time reading through all those documents and stuff. You can spend the 60 seconds or 5 minutes to verify some of the sources are correct. And then the last thing is make sure to use common sense. Can it replace a real estate attorney? Sorta. What it's doing, it's pushing you in the right direction and giving you some overall really good guidance. However, if you're going to make a pretty drastic business decision, evict somebody, lock something out, withhold payment, something of that nature, I would probably make sure to consult somebody else, and that somebody else could be an actual real estate attorney, like ChatGPT mentioned. You could call up your local real estate investor association or apartment association. Usually they have resources or just people you can ask stuff to, or ask somebody, again, more experienced than you, but a second opinion, whether you're doing anything, generally doesn't hurt before you make a drastic or important business decision. Again, I know I mentioned this before, but the resources that you compiled today could be up to date tomorrow. So next time that you are using this tool, just make sure to update the information that you gave it on the front end. So if you actually went through and implemented this and had a chance to use it, I'm curious what you think. Throw a comment in the description, because I put this in here and I used this and went to a bunch of landlord forums and was just trying to pull a ton of questions, and I'm just feeding a bunch of questions through this. And for my city and my state, it actually hasn't given me a wrong answer once. The worst thing that it did was not give me a specific answer. And I think it's probably doing that because, again, we told it was an attorney, and I feel like that's a very attorney thing to do, to say it needs more information and tell me to sort of do more research and consult other things. So that's the worst thing it did. So I'm curious how it's working for you. So definitely throw a comment in the description and let me know what you think. So if you thought this video was cool, I'm going to be making more videos about other applications for ChatGPT and real estate on my channel. I have a bunch of other landlord tech related tips. So make sure to stay tuned for the next video, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.